The ones we've had thus far, you're most welcome to do so. You can drop us your voice notes on the WhatsApp line +2783288684. Now, water is fast becoming one of Africa's greatest development challenges as climate change reshapes weather patterns across the continent. Countries are grappling with growing water scarcity, food insecurity, and the increasing threats of droughts as well. And of course, one of the many contributors, El Niño, being one of those. Let me welcome my guest in studio, Dr. Henry Roman, a country representative for the International Water Management Institute in Southern Africa. Dr. Roman, a very good morning to you. Welcome to Channel Africa.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Now, climate change is spoken of many a times. I remember I did a program some years ago already, before the word climate change became a buzzword. But I would imagine you, Dr. Roman, much longer than me. It's a subject matter that you quite affair with. Now, climate change no longer a future concern for Africa. It is already here and reshaping livelihoods and life as we know it, right?
True. And I think the big thing, like you said, the evidence is now before us. It's not theoretical any longer. It's now fact. We're seeing the changes. If you like, we work with a lot with farmers in the region, in the neighboring countries, and they face this daily because shifting patterns of rainfall means their planting changes. When they plant changes, and when they plant is important. Because if they plant at the wrong time, you don't get the crop.
Yeah, so I was going to say even when they harvest, but before we get to that,
you've got to plant at the right time.
Absolutely. Yeah. So along with that, I mean, how should African governments be rethinking water security, as it were, as a strategic development priority rather than simply an environmental issue?
That's so correct. You know, water is no longer just an environmental thing to be dealt with, especially in Africa. As we know, the climate predictive models are telling us that we're going to be the hottest continent on the planet, right? Due to climate change. So we have to start thinking about this more strategically. So water itself is the foundation of every economy, every meal you eat, every job you have, every climate response. Water is central to that response. And governments need to treat water not just as an economic factor, but as a strategic national asset. So we treat finance, like we treat energy. Water must fall in the same category because it's that vital. You can go without power and you can find an alternative. Unfortunately, there's no alternative to water.
Absolutely.
You know?
And without it, you're not going to get too far, right?
Not at all. I think the estimate is you'll live for 3 days without any water intake.
Wow.
Compare that to a few more days if you have zero food intake, which is now more important.
Absolutely. And I like the comparison you're making, Dr. Roman, that water is more precious than all of the other things, whether oil, electricity. I mean, we've survived. Okay, we've gone through a year without load shedding, but we made it through, you know. But it really brings it to the fore when you say human survival is just all of 3 days you have without water.
But now, I purposefully put food in there because food security is dependent on water security, right? So if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, agriculture is rain-fed, which means it's dependent on rain. And we also have 150 million Africans that face severe to extreme hunger on the continent. And that is also linked to climate and, of course, to water shocks that come subsequent to the climate shock. So when you take that into account, you've also got, in our region, 70% of regional water resources also cross borders. So transboundary management of the water resource across 15 basins in the region makes this a political issue as well, and a governance one. at the same time.
Oh wow! Just focusing on the El Nino phenomenon, as it were, it is expected. I mean, we're already experiencing extreme heat levels, as it were, and it's going to be drier even in most parts, particularly southern Africa, and particularly vulnerable regions like the Northern Cape. So, what does this tell us about the continent's preparedness or lack thereof, and are we doing enough to move from reacting to drought and rather to anticipating?
So anticipatory action is becoming more and more of a conversation amongst the scientists, amongst the governments worldwide as well. And this coming El Nino, which is projected to be a very, very harsh one, will also be a stress test for us in Africa. In terms of how far has Africa shifted from reactive crisis management to anticipatory action. We have made some progress along that, and the Northern Cape shows us some of that as well. It's one of the driest of our provinces, as you said, but it's heavily dependent on seasonal rainfall and surface flows. So the rivers must have water in them for agriculture, for livestock, for domestic supply. And the central Karoo is predicted in South Africa to be one of the hardest hit. It's already a semi-arid part of the country with persistent drought. We know this, and especially parts of the Eastern Cape that fall in that region that have had drought for a number of years already.
The Karoo?
The Karoo area, yeah. But there's also groundwater. So over-abstraction of groundwater has negative impacts in future. So we need to also manage how we use conjunctive use, as we call it, where you combine surface water with groundwater. And so you have a water mix. But we also have to bring some other parts into this water mix, like rainwater harvesting, for example. And getting that mix right and not over-abstracting from groundwater, because we don't know about things like aquifer recharge in all cases. What is the rate of recharge, which differs per aquifer. So if you take the water out faster than it gets replenished, you end up with a deficit. And then if you don't have surface water and you don't have groundwater, now you're stuck in a hard place.
Where does desalination come in here? I mean, you're going to be on the coast to extract the seawater and convert that into drinkable.
However, in South Africa, especially in Limpopo province, a lot of the groundwater is brackish water. So you could desalinate that water. You need to desalinate that water prior to consumption. So desalination, yes. At the coast, easy answer.
Sure.
The Department of Water and Sanitation have done the numbers, try to look at, should we desalinate at Durban and bring it up to Joburg, and the numbers are insanely astronomical, so it's not a viable option.
Wow, so we can forget about Cape Town then.
But if you do it at Durban or at Cape Town, yes, it's a viable option. I remember when they did the day zero and everybody was wanting to build a big, massive desalination plant, and Cape Town paid attention to what the scientists were saying and went for modular approaches. Now, modular approach is a better one. We learned this because of what happened in Australia a decade or so back, well, almost 2 decades back. Because if it's modular, you can take it on and add, or you can take it off when you don't need it. Because when you keep a desalination plant, once you've built it, it must become part of the water mix for the municipality, and because they will be maintaining that plant.
Absolutely. The same way we have energy mix, right?
Exactly.
With solar and
so we
otherwise
need to start
generated.
thinking about a water mix as well.
So you mentioned the drier conditions that we already are familiar with as far as the Northern Cape is concerned and the Karoo. Where does fraction come in there? Those who are you're extracting more from underground and leaving our areas in disarray and causing more problems.
Yeah, the department, I think, has started a program to start monitoring UNI when we just sink a borehole when we want one, which is actually not entirely a legal process. You need to understand also, so the city needs to approve that you sink a borehole because they understand the aquifer system. So if suddenly on one aquifer 50 households sink a borehole, you can imagine that aquifer is going to be depleted.
Absolutely.
Very quickly. So there's a lot to think about. But we do have in South Africa, at least, the National Water Resource Strategy, the third iteration of that. And that one is talking to the water mix. It's also talking to different things that we can do as well.
Absolutely. Dr. Roman, I'd like to hold on to that thought. So we talk about the future, and there must be some glimmer of hope, right? Somewhere. We'll continue with our discussion shortly after this break. It's 21 minutes past 11 CAT.
Africa World Hour with Mposi Tole.
David Njumbe, who's a long-serving personal assistant to Tundu Lisu for over 15 years, on the night of 20 May, he survived a shocking abduction attempt just meters from his home. Talk us through what exactly happened on that night.
It is something that happened in my head. I expected to meet such situation for several months since the first attempt to abduct me was 6 months ago. There was a car coming very speedy behind me. I let them go. Instead of going, more than 6 people came out of that car and attacked me and they said police. I started fighting back and they handcuffed me. Immediately they started beating me, and one of them was telling me, "You have been running here and there. Now it's your time, it's your day, it's your last day."
Africa World Hour with Mposi Tole. Catch it on the Channel Africa app, SABC Plus, and on channelafrica.co.za. Weekdays from 9 till 10 p.m. Central African Time. Stay tuned to Channel Africa. Stream us on our new and updated website, channelafrica.co.za.
Right, 22 minutes past 11 Central African Time. You are on the Journal with me, Ernest Pillay. Let's continue our conversation now, talking about climate change and water scarcity. My guest is Dr. Henry Roman, country researcher for the International Water Management Institute in Southern Africa. Dr. Roman, let's look ahead to the future with a glimmer of hope. And you know, whilst I say that, extreme weather events, according to scientists, will become more frequent and more severe, they tell us. Now, if Africa is to build long-term water resilience, what are the most urgent investment and policy shifts that need to happen now?
So currently what we have with government in most parts of the world, actually, they're dominated by a reaction to the crisis instead of looking at it in an anticipatory fashion, right? So we declared the disaster after the fact,
yes,
and not prepare for the fact. And so that's one of the things we should be starting to look at. We've got experience. I mean, the last El Niño was 2023-24. Countries like Zambia were not just affected by a drought, which led to less water. They are a hydropower country. It led to load shedding on a large scale across both Zambia and Zimbabwe and Malawi to some extent, because suddenly there's no water to drive the turbines. So there's that linkage that we need to look at of how this nexus approach. So it's not just you can't just tackle one part of the problem. You got to tackle the problem holistically. So it's water, it's energy, it's food, it's the environment. That integration, that nexus, you got to come up with a complex solution to this very complex problem that we're trying to solve for. And that thinking is where, and the NWRS that I referred to just before the break actually speaks to that. And in South Africa, we term it ecological infrastructure. And how we address the nexus as well through maintenance of ecosystems, maintenance of catchments, because the catchments are being degraded for various reasons, and the catchment is where your water is produced. So just an example, the Upper Tugela in the Drakensberg produces the water that's fed through Sterkfontein Dam to Gauteng. The people who live in Upper Tugela don't have access to that water. So there's also equity that comes into the discussion. So equitable allocation of water to all people, because don't forget, our constitution says all of us have the right to clean water.
Well, absolutely. But as I alluded to this, and you would know this, Dr. Roman, scientists and people in your field of work have warned for years now that future wars won't be fought over gold and other precious metals, right? It will be fought over something we take for granted, which is water. And it's slowly but surely becoming quite evident that we are almost there, right? We are almost...
Very much so. If you look at the tension between Egypt and Ethiopia about the Nile, where they want to build a massive dam at the source. And Egypt looks at that and says, but then where does our water, this is our sole supply, you know, coming down this river for thousands and thousands of years. That's a tension. If there's tension across the world where water is shared between two countries. And in South Africa, we share water with Lesotho. The Lesotho Highlands project is a case in point. We share water with Mozambique. We share water with Zimbabwe, with Botswana, with Namibia, with Eswatini. We share water with all the countries around us. So the management of that water is critical, because and the good thing is, in this region, we've got what we call the SADC Water Protocol. And that protocol is how the countries manage the relationships between them with regards to water.
Yeah. So we touched on the Northern Cape's water challenges mirrored in many parts of Africa, as you've mentioned, Dr. Roman, from the Horn of Africa to Sahel. What lessons can other African countries take from the work being done in the Central Karoo? And how can successful local solutions be scaled across the continent, you think?
So one of the things to look at is that Central Karoo district in South Africa is, if you look at it, in many ways, it's a microcosm of dryland Africa. Semi-arid, climate-stressed, water-scarce, and high youth unemployment. On the continent, 65% of the continent are under 25 years of age. We can't solve this problem without the youth. And that's something we have to constantly keep in mind as well. So what works in the Central Karoo in many ways can be taken as an example we can scale elsewhere on the continent. But we have to scale the model intelligently and not mechanically. What I mean by that is you got to be context specific. So start with the evidence. Understand where you are. Don't make assumptions. So in this AquaFutures program, which we are working with the Water Research Commission on, we did a baseline piece of work to understand in the local municipalities what's the socio-economic conditions, the groundwater dependencies, infrastructure gaps, before we started thinking about the interventions. So first understand the problem. So if we replicate this or scale this, it's important you do it context specific. Understand your context before you hear someone coming in and telling you what the solution is. And I say understand your context because you live there. So what you observe is very important to the people that try to come with a solution for you.
From the outside, looking in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Just in closing, Dr. Roman, you touch on young people, and that links up, I mean, with AquaFutures South Africa. You'd like to expand more? I mean, what programs do you have in place to bring young people on board?
So this particular one, well, it's like I said, it's a project we're doing with the Water Research Commission, but not just with them. We're also working with the Arid Regions Water Research Center at Sol Plaatje University. I think they're in Kimberley. So we're working with them as well, as well as with the local municipalities, Ubuntu and Mthanjeni municipalities. So working with them. Also got the Department of Water and Sanitation and the Department of Social Development as other partners. So this particular piece of work is also combining citizen science, groundwater monitoring, and a program a program we started called virtual field trips. Now imagine this: you can't go to Richmond, but I've got for you a VR system that allows you to immerse yourself in Richmond.
You know, one of those gadgets you put across your head.
Yeah, exactly. So we use that as a teaching tool. a lot of farmers we work with are illiterate. So giving them a pamphlet is a pointless exercise, right? But with a VR tool set or headset, you put it on, they can learn new ways of doing things by being immersed in that virtual space. So that's something that IWMI has been doing in different countries across the continent as well.
Yeah.
But together with that, the indigenous knowledge of the local people is also critical. We hear it all the time. You go to Venda and there's an old man, he'll tell you, the wind is blowing in that direction, I think the rains are coming. Or the birds are flying like this,
there's a storm.
There's a storm. We need to capture that and codify that and understand that so that we can incorporate it into the science knowledge base that we have. Because there's a scientific explanation for why the birds are doing what they're doing.
True.
But we need to understand that. So how do we incorporate that is also very important. Also, like I said, the lived experience, that's data. Participants themselves will tell you what's wrong in their area. And that is their lived experience over generations in some instances. And then just the last one, youth-led innovation is not an option. It's essential for us to actually make this work. And our own researcher, Sepati Mokema, puts it quite neatly, and she says, water security in Africa requires a paradigm shift that centers women and young people as architects of the solutions. And I think that's a good way just to end that piece there.
I couldn't have said it better. It's a perfect point to leave this all-important subject matter on. I mean, we hope not to realize what other scientists have been warning us about, about the next war is being fought over water. We hope the work you're doing, and along with other scientists, in preserving this precious resource, go long and far. And, touch wood, we don't experience anything worse than what we are seeing now.
No, true. And from an IWMI perspective, we've just launched globally a new platform. It's a governance platform, transboundary governance platform in preparation for UN Water 2026. And this is a platform to allow governments, scientists, and public to engage each other on this topic, especially where the water crosses the boundaries of countries.
Absolutely. Doctor, I'm going to thank you very much. Quite a lot that you left us with in terms of thought processing, but we thank you for your insights and your time as well. All right, Dr. Henry Roman is a country representative at the International Water Management Institute in Southern Africa. I know I'm out of time. Apologies, Fikile Lingwati, standing by with Channel Africa Sport.
Sports on Channel Africa.